Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na ma tu'allimuna wa zidna bi fadlika ilman wa ta'liman innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. He says, وَتَلَاقِي بَشَرَتَيْ ذَكَرٍ وَأُنْثَى. That coming into contact. Talaqi, right? That they meet one another. Not that they actually intentionally touched, right? So just even if it's unintentional. Walau khasiyan, even if he's a eunuch. You know what a eunuch is, Ammar?
Yes, from Shakespeare. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. Jawad, if you're familiar with a eunuch?
Yes.
Right. So this is the existence of eunuchs, is a problem, right? Just like I mentioned before, like slavery in North America is partly part of because of the Muslims. Similarly, eunuchs, right? What is a eunuch? Is somebody who's they've been castrated. So, well, in Islam, can you castrate a human? So you can't do that. It's haram. So how did you have this thing? So, well, we should buy it from Christians. We should go and buy it from a Christian. They would castrate men, and so we just buy it from them. So doesn't buying it from them lead to it? You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's certain things you see in Islamic history, which is indicative of a problem. Like the fact that you talk about eunuchs and eunuchs existed, that it means that we have a moral problem. Like so it's also connected to the whole idea of having tons and tons of concubines. So you have all these concubines, you know how to control them. So you have men to control them, but you don't have men that can be sexually active. So you have men that are not sexually active. So it's is that a goal? Like, is it? I mean, is it haram to have tons and tons of concubines? It's not, but it's like, it just, some of these things just indicative of decadence, right? Decadence and not really trying to be Islamically moral, just trying to do what is technically halal, right? So there's a big difference. Wallahu a'lam. Just walau khasiyan aw mamsuhan amdan. So even if they can't be sexually active, so even if the madhinna is not there at all, right? This person could not be sexually active. Doesn't matter. The point is the madhinna is there. The potential is still there. Amdan, right? Intentionally, كانت تلاقي أو سهوا. Intentional, unintentional. بشهوة أو دونها, with or without shahwa, right? Because we're not looking at the reality of it, we're looking at the possibility of it. بعضو سليم أو أشلة, right? You touch them, that your skin contact happened with a hand that works, or an extra growth that's coming out of your head. Touch this woman. لآية أو لامستم النساء, أي لمستم كما قرئ به, right? Which is قراءة Ibn Kathir. لمستم. لا جمعتم. Why? لأنه خلاف الظاهر. So خلاف الظاهر, is majaz impossible? No. But where's the dalil? There's no dalil. Okay, so then therefore it doesn't exist. Right? So we have no issue with majaz. The issue is that there's no dalil for the majaz. So there we go. واللمس الجس باليد وبغيرها أو الجس with the صاد باليد. Right? So it mentions in the Hashiyah, okay, it doesn't explain the difference here, but jas with a sin and jas with a sad. I believe jas is more like touching, fondling, right? وألحق بها غيرها بها وعليه الشافعي والمعنى في النقد بأنه مظنة التلذذ. Right? So why is that appropriate? So when you go to the bathroom, does it, what do you, is it, doesn't matter how you feel, whether it happened on purpose or not? So in the things that break wudu, does it matter how you feel or whether you did it or not? How you felt when you slept? Did you sleep well or not? Does that affect it? Like you know, uh uh relieving yourself, was it intentional, unintentional? There's no difference, right? So we have to have a system here, right? So it cannot be whether you intended it or not, or whether it felt like this or felt like that. That can't be relevant. So basically, so it's got to be one of these two things. It either has to be intercourse or it has to be skin-to-skin contact, one of the two. As for something in the middle, that would mean stipulating things like, did you feel lust? Did you mean to? Did you not mean to? Right? So, it's basically A or B. B is metaphorical. There's no clear dalil, so we're going to go with A. Right? And interestingly, the position that is B, meaning that it means intercourse, is, you find a lot of Mufassirin explaining that, but it's actually a very minority opinion. Like it's the position of Imam Muhammad. So the Kufans, the Hanafis, they take the fatwa of some of the Sahaba that al-labsu ma duna nikah. It's that which falls short of intercourse. So it's actually not intercourse. So the idea that the verse is metaphorical, like literally metaphorical meaning intercourse, is actually a fairly minority opinion, right? It is an opinion. It's not a shared position, but it's a minority opinion. It's not a majority opinion. اوكي مظنة التلذذ المثير للشهوة وسواء في ذلك اللامس والملموس على الأظهر, right? So the خلاف الأظهر is the خلاف الأظهر is that no, the malmus is wudu is not broken. So the lady touched you, or you're not sure, did I touch her or did she touch me? Your wudu is not broken. That's a strong position in the school. It's not a weak position in the school. كما أفهمه التعبير بالتلاقي لاشتراكهما في لذة اللبس, right? كالمشتركين في لذة الجماع والبشرة ظاهر الجلد وفي معناه اللحم كلحم الأسنان, the gums, وخرج بها الحائل ولو رقيقا, even if it's very thin, والشعر, so touching a woman's hair, or a tooth, right? So what about, like, so can I so you're sitting next to a woman on the bus and you bumped into her, your shoulder touched her shoulder, but it was just no skin, right? Okay. والسن والظفر, and the nails, إذ لا يلتذ بلمسها وبذكر وأنثى الذكران, two males, والأنثيان, and two females, والخنثيان, and two hermaphrodites, والخنثى والذكر, right? Similarly, is she old enough or not? So here's this girl. She could be somewhere from 5 to 7. You don't know. Can you touch her hand? No. If I touch my hand, does it break my wudu? No. Okay, well, why can I not touch her hand? Well, I'm not sure if it's halal for me to touch her. I'm not really sure if she's old enough to be in the category of woman or not. So I'm not sure. So it's haram for you to touch her hand. If you touch her hand, does it break wudu? No, because you're not sure she's old enough for her to be a woman. That makes sense, right? I'm not sure. I'm not saying whether or not she's reached puberty, but is she old enough to be considered like having a woman form, or she have a baby form? Okay, makes sense, guys. Jawad and Ammar. Anybody else joined?
Yes,
Is
sure.
that making sense, everybody? Everyone's following? Ammar just Ammar, you just went on Ammar, right? So you had the fun of your life breaking wudu on the mataf, right? I managed to use doubt to keep my wudu in all of my tawafs. Apart from my final tawaf on tawaf my final tawaf ifada on Hajj, where this woman put her hand in my face. I was like, there we go. So
Yeah, that's what I do, subhanAllah. I just don't look.
yeah, just don't look.
I
So I
mean, I
mean,
just
so again, so the point is there's
yeah,
99% chance that you got touched by a woman, but it doesn't matter. That doesn't count.
right.
Don't look.
If I do know, then you just take the khilaf
Exactly.
al-Adhar. It's like,
Yeah, and
yeah,
so here's just a side point. Why would it be wise to take that position? A, because there is genuine difficulty, but B, because it's not just difficult for you, right? Now you want to leave the mataf and go make wudu. So you're leaving, right? It's like heating up a gas, right? You have the gas molecules, they're in a container and you heat it up, suddenly move around more. So now you increase the pressure, right? So you increase the temperature by the molecules moving around more, and now you've increased the pressure, right? So you've just now made life harder for other people by you being religious, right? Can you not just follow the other three madhabs for a bit, you know? It's not the end of the world. Not to mention that there are ikhtiyarat within the school that say no, that touching without lust does not break wudu. That's an ikhtiyar exists within the school, right? So, make things difficult for yourself, don't make things difficult for other people, right? I mentioned this many times. You're not married, you don't have a wife that's waiting for you, you don't have kids that are crying. MashaAllah, in the airport, pray all your sunnahs, don't join or, repeat your prayer in its time. Now you're married, you've got baby that's crying and really wants to be rocked to sleep, wife that's exhausted. Take every rukhsah possible to make life easy for other people. So you take rukhsahs for other people, and for the sake of Allah, you don't take rukhsahs for the sake of the nafs, right? Okay, well, so it says, so now, for example, two lesbians are touching sexually. Does that break wudu? It does not. Two homosexual men are touching sexually. Does that break wudu? The answer is no, it does not. Okay, why? Because that's not normal. وَالنَّادِرْ لَا حُكْمَ لَهُ. I'm not interested in how you personally feel. I'm interested in what is normal, right? Touching a mahram, etc. Doesn't. You're not interested in how this person's attracted to their sister. He's married to his sister. That doesn't matter, right? That doesn't. If he touches his sister, even if he touches her sexually, may Allah protect us. That doesn't. That doesn't break your wudu. والذكر أو الأنثى والعضو المبان, right? A body part that's been cut off. لانتفاء مظنة الشهوة, even if there is حقيقة الشهوة, it doesn't matter. Because the madhinna is that the normal assumption that there's going to be shahwa is not there, even if there is, right? So we're interested, the illa is madhinnat al-shahwa. بكبر أي مع كبرهما بأن بلغ حد الشهوة وإن انتفت لهرم أو نحو اكتفاء بمظنتها. Right? So it says that that they have reached an age that somebody of that age would normally be found attractive. So it says أي لأرباب الطباع السليمة وأشار بذلك إلى أن الضابط ما ذكروا ولا يتقيد بسن. It is not a particular age, right? Somebody who is not a pedophile would normally find somebody like that, right? So normally somebody like that attractive, not that individual themselves, but somebody of that kind of age, of that kind of, right? So we're not saying, so what about somebody who's like disabled or covered in feces? Oh, nobody would consider that person attractive. So yeah, but the person they're of that age, right? They're of that kind of body type. وإن انتفت, even if there's no shahwa. I'm not talking about shahwa, I'm talking about the possibility of shahwa, right? So in general, in law, throughout the world, in laws and in the sharia, we're not really interested in reality, we're interested in potential, because you can't really deal with many realities. So I'm not interested whether or not whether you crashed into somebody. I'm interested in you drove in a way that would normally result in a crash. So you went faster than the speed limit. That's the madhinna of al-khatar, of danger. You drove on the wrong side of the road. Madhinna, right, of khatar, right? That there's a possibility of danger now. I'm not interested in whether or not you killed somebody. I'm interested that you did something that normally results in that, right? That's how ahkam and laws usually work, because you can't actually work with other things, not something that we can work with. And this is known as the difference between the hikmah and the illah, right? What's the difference between the hikmah and the illah is that the hikmah is غير منضبطة وغير ظاهرة, right? It is not necessarily, it's this kind of like general idea, right? We kind of understand why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not want you to pray after being sexually active, or in a way that's kind of like that. It's like it kind of disturbs the way you are, right? So the general idea is that you should be, when you're water, so to speak, when you are shaken up somehow, right? You went to the bathroom, you were asleep, you touch your private parts, you touch the opposite sex, you're shaken up, right? Now you should go and align yourself again. That's the general idea. That's the hikmah, right? But that's not zahir. It's not outward and obvious. Wala mundabita. Nor is it just have a very defined line. So we have to, every law, we have to try and bring down to something we can actually measure. Male, female, baligh, not baligh, 5 foot, 6 foot, right? These are things that are measurable. You know, where was your tire when where was the back tire when the light turned red, right? Not did you kill somebody or not, or did you drive dangerously or not, right? That's the hikmah. But the illah is different, right? Does that make sense? So a lot of the time in fiqh, we're not going to be looking at the madhan, the potential of something, not the reality of something, because it's usually not a zahir mundabita, right? Makes sense? Go ahead, Ammar.
Sorry, with the position where only the lamis has the rule nullified, like what differentiates between the lamis and the manmos?
Um, well, if I said here's my hand and you touch my hand, right? You touch my hand. I didn't touch your hand.
Right. But in the case of like bumping into one another, is it
Yeah, so
neither?
then you're not sure. If you're not sure, then it doesn't make you wudu,
Okay.
right? So did I touch her? Did she bump into me or did I bump into her? I don't know. Okay, the wudu is not broken, right? So that's quite a useful rukhsa. It's a strong rukhsa, it, you know, etc. But again, the whole idea is we take rukhsas for the sake of Allah. You don't take rukhsas because they can't be bothered, right? Whenever you take a rukhsa because you can't be bothered, you are saying my nafs is akbar. That's what you're saying. Even if it's halal, fantastic, it's halal. But like, you're taking it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Um, so that's the dabit, right? Sufyan al-Thawri, he said, I've never seen anything harder than sacred knowledge and actually applying it, right? Which it is, right? It's very hard. Like altruism, right? Like I'm looking at the pizza, and it's not that I want to offer it to Ammar. I actually want, like my heart of hearts, I would be more happy if Ammar ate the pizza than I did, even though I'm hungry and even though I really like that type of pizza. You know what I'm saying? That's pretty hard. So these games that we play with, is it halal, is it haram? They're quite. It's even if fiqh is pretty hard, I think it's always super hard. It's nothing compared to the inner games, right? The inner games that we're playing. Of am I doing this for the sake of myself or for the sake of Allah? These are the real mayadin and nufus, right? The battlegrounds of the egos, right? That you're changing your core from self worship to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, بكبر أي مع كبرهما بأن بلغ حد الشهوة وإن انتفت, even if it's not there, لهرم أو نحوه اكتفاء بمظنتها بخلاف التلاقي مع الصغر الذي لا شهوة معه فلا ينقض لانتفاء مظنتها. وذكر كبر وذكر وذكر كبر الذكر من زيادة. Oh, مع كبرهما, with them both being old enough, right? So it says mentioning both of them, male and female, adding the male here is min ziyadati, is of what Shaykh al-Islam added. It says لا تلاقي بشرتي ذكر وأنثى محرم له بنسب أو رضاع أو مصاهرة فلا نقض بذلك. Okay, let's go to the matan then. Let's quickly read that again. So it says وهي تسعة أشياء ما يخرج من أحد السبيلين الثاني أن ينسد السبيل ويخرج الحدث من سبيل آخر. Right, stop me if you don't remember the discussion. ما يغلب والعقل إلا النوم قاعدا مستويا مس فرج الآدمي ببطن الكف من نفسه أو من غيره ملامسة بدن الرجل دون المرأة ولا حائل بينهما إلا الشعر والظفر والسن وفي مس ذوات المحارم والصغار قولان. Right, so there's قولان there. If touching a girl, right, is she considered female? Yes. Right, so so the text says nisa. Does that is that kharaj makhraj al-ghalib? Is that just the normal way, or does it mean specifically females who have reached puberty? So do we do qiyas from female do we do qiyas from women to females? In which case we're going to include children. And do we do qiyas and do we and the biggest question is, can we exclude maharim? Because maharim are not excluded in the nas, right? It just says women. It doesn't say if, so that should Allah mastam nisa. If you touch women, so you touched your mum, that's called touching women, right? So we say it's we do takhsis bil illa. We say the illa is madannat shahwa. That's the illa. And now we're going to do takhsis of the word nisa. We say that's going to exclude your pubescent, your daughter who's reached puberty, your sister, your mother, your aunt, etc., because there's no madinna to shahwa, right? So whether or not it says fihi qawlan, right? In reality, wajhan, I think, not qawlan, right? And he says asahhuhuma la yanqudu wudu'uhu. I believe the asah, it's not asah, it's the sahih, right? So this is not an issue of asah or khilaf al-asah. This is an issue of sahih and khilaf al-sahih, right? So when we say sahih, we're meaning wajhan. What's the difference between wajhan and qawlan?
Wajhan are from the Ashab and
Exactly.
Qawlan are from the Aqwal of Imam Shafi'i.
So as far as I know, you can check the He mentions here أصحهما لا ينقضوا. So look in the see what it says there. I don't think Allahu Alam. But I believe in the Majmu' in the Minhaj and Majmu' you're going to find it as the as-sahih wal da'if. So it is an ikhtilaf between the ashab, and the ikhtilaf is weak, right? We do not include little girls or mahrams, and that is those positions are weak. Wallahu alam. Okay, السادس انقضاء الحدث الدائم إلا في الصلاة, we did that. بطلان حكم المسح على الخفين, we did that. وفيه قول آخر أنه يقتصر على غسل الرجلين, and this is the asah, right? The relied upon position is that your wudu, your time for your khufs is broken because we do not stipulate muwala and continuity in wudu. It doesn't matter that you made wudu this morning and wiped on your khufs, and then the wudu of your khufs was broken because it ran out of time, and now you just wash the rest of your body, right? That's the correct position. So in reality, فيه قول آخر based on the jadid, which is muwala is not a condition. Everyone's following me? I'm mentioning this quickly because it's just review, right? Everyone's following? Musa, Jawad, Ammar?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? والثامن بطلان حكم المسح على الجبائر, same issue. So Ammar, so this issue here was that the qadim is that when you make wudu, you have to do it with continuity. And if you didn't have continuity, it wouldn't count. That's the qadim. Accordingly, if you make wudu and wipe on your khufs, and then the time of your khufs, the khuf has a hole in it, or the time expires, then what's going to happen then is the wudu of the foot is going to be broken. And given that there's now a gap in time, that means you are now going to have to wash your foot, and that's going to be done much later than the rest of your limbs. So therefore, the whole wudu doesn't count. And that's based on the qadim that you have to have muwala in wudu. Based on the jadid, there's no muwala, in which case there's no issue. Does it make sense? Right? So here it says fihi qawl akhar. What do you mean qawl akhar? Do you mean qawl jadid or qawl qadim? Right? So this is what we're talking about, right? You're doing takhrij or something. One second, guys. My apologies. So, these are these games that we're playing, and this is what this kind of thing. So notice here he says he mentions here وهو قول الشافعي في الجديد. Right. So here he's mentioning actually the قديم. وفي القديم يستأنف وصححه النووي وغيره. وصحح غيره الأول. So when he says صححه, what do you mean? You mean اختاره or صححه? There's a difference, right? Is everyone following me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So he says صححه النووي وغيره, meaning maybe اختاره. So perhaps Imam Nawawi did ikhtiyar of the qawl al-qadim, that you have to have muwala. Accordingly, if you have to take your khufs off while you have wudu, then you're going to have to make wudu from scratch, right? And so what does this tell us then? This is one of these things, is that learning a madhab is a matrix. It is a matrix of substantive laws. Meaning, so as a Salafi, I'm like, oh, the Rajih has this, but I don't have a matrix. Here I have a matrix. So here so Imam Nawawi comes along, he works as a Shafi'i, presumably, and his ikhtiyar is the old school. Now, suddenly, that means as this matrix, suddenly that kicks off another light over here. Based on this, now if you took your khufs off in the middle, you're gonna have to wash. Can you see that? Because
Wait, sorry, I'm a bit confused. So what is the mu'tamad in this mas'ala then?
so the mu'tamad in the mas'ala, the correct position in the school is that muwala is not a condition of wudu. Okay, muwala is not a condition of wudu. Therefore, if you make wudu and wipe on your khufs, and then you get a hole in your khufs or take your khufs off, you just have to wash your foot and that's it. Okay? Because the other position would say, no, there's now a gap between washing the feet and wiping the head. So now you have to start from scratch. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And then the qawl that Imam Nawawi does ikhtiyar of is istitnaf. He has to repeat.
It's enough, correct, yeah. So what I'm trying to say though is the difference between doing an ikhtiyar in a school and doing ikhtiyar by yourself as a Salafi, right? So now I've turned one light. It's like again like it's like what's it called, like a circuit, right? You turn this one light on, that turns all these lights on, right? So you have this whole matrix, complex system, and now you have all these answers already given to you. If you said this means this, right? And you have all these furu', right? If you took this position, for example, here, similarly, here's in a position in usul, that you cannot do takhsis bil illah. Okay? So we all agree that you can do tafri' bil illah. You can expand a text with an illah. That's called qiyas, right? You extrapolate from A to B because it has the same illah. But can I qualify A? Can I reduce A with an illah? Yes or no in usul? You take the position no. Suddenly you have all of these things. Now you're going to say, well, accordingly, right? You took that one setting off in usul. Suddenly all these furu' are now different. Now you're going to say, for example, oh, if you touch your mother, it breaks wudu. Right? So you have this whole network, right? This very sensitive of like neurons of fiqh, right? As opposed to somebody who has one neuron, you know? Like you don't have a matrix. It's not a matrix. It's not, there's no system. It's just one little thing here and there. Go ahead, Musa.
Afwan, ya Shaykhana. To refer back to what you said about the Salafiyya movement currently, just to tie what you just said, that's essentially one of the big problems, right? Is that essentially they don't have a matrix and where it falls apart because of A plus B, C equals so forth and so forth, right? Am I understanding that
No,
part correctly?
what it means is it's just very impoverished. You're just very poor in your, like you put this effort into something and you solve one problem. Let's assuming that it's even a valid, you don't have anything else because you're not part of a tradition and you're not part of a system.
Okay,
So
that makes
suddenly,
sense.
basically, like whereas someone like Imam Nawawi, they would see themselves as Nawawis, right? Like Imam Nawawi, like I remember speaking to a Salaf, he's like, yeah, Imam Nawawi left the Shafi school, meaning he disagreed with the Shafi school. Like it's okay. But Imam Shafi disagreed as a Shafi'i. There's a difference. They don't understand that difference. They just think you're either blindly following every single thing or totally independent in every single thing. It's not like that. So Imam Nawawi, as part of this system, he turns one switch here that turns all these other switches there,
That makes sense.
right? And now that's fruitful. It's useful, right? So an ikhtiyar in a school is a useful contribution to the school because part of that whole discussion, you're working within the same frame and usulan, furu'an, qawa'idan is great. Qawa'idan is not a word because it's a very musarif. But anyway, qa'idatan, or how are we going to say it? Min hayth al-qawa'id al-fiqhiyya, right? Whereas somebody who's just coming out of a system, you kind of like weird. So there's this lady staying at my house right now, is a friend of my wife's. She's a black belt in karate, right? And I'm like fiqh and traditional sciences in general, like karate, right? So she made this point. She said, when I got to black belt, that's when you start to learn, right? So now she's, let's say, third Dan, fourth Dan, and she comes up with a different stance or a different way. She's not breaking everything she learned, she's adding. But imagine you come in and you're like, I'm Street Fighter, and it's like you didn't even do anything. And you're like white belt. And it's like, I'm going to change the stance, I'm going to change the process, I'm going to change this and change that. And it's like you're not actually adding anything to karate. You're just kind of like, you're just a weirdo. You're just outside of discussion, right? Or somebody sat in the meeting, the first meeting, the second meeting, the third meeting, and now they want to contribute. That it's useful. The person who sat in the very first meeting, he was first day of a job, he's in the meeting, starts saying things like, why are you talking? It's not useful. It's not a useful part of the discussion, right? Or somebody who, for example, looks at Freudian psychology and doesn't put it in the bigger way of how you look at philosophy, you don't connect, the things, then you're not part of this whole flow. So one change today in how you're going to deal with this individual in a hospital, right? It's part of a whole flow of ideas to do with what schools of psychology, which stem from which schools of philosophy you ascribe to. It's one thing. If you change one thing upriver, everything's going to come down because it's one system. But somebody who is just unsophisticated, right, and a novice, they don't have a system. It doesn't actually make any sense. Does that make sense?
Yes.
خير. So what we would tell our Salafi brethren, they are brethren, right? They love Allah, they love His Messenger, they love the Sunnah, right? Is Habibi, join the discussion. Nobody's trying to limit your mind, but just join the discussion, right? Step in. And there are people who are like that. They will a bit more balanced, right? Okay. Okay. بطلان حكم المسح على الجبائر. Same discussion. What happened if you didn't fulfill the conditions? You had wiped on a bandage and now you took that bandage off, right? So same discussion as the previous one, like because it's the same as khufs. وبطلان التيمم إذا جمع بينه وبين الماء وفيهما قول آخر, right? Similarly, a whole discussion. We say in the Shafi'i school that if you have just enough water to wash your face, you have to wash your face and then you do tayammum for the rest of your body. That is based on the discussion that when you have a bandage, you will wash as much as the body if you can and make tayammum. If you said you don't make tayammum, then accordingly you would only make you would not be obliged to wash the face, because the first position is the idea that you do everything you can and then more, right? Or you do everything you can even if it's imperfect. The second position is, well, if you can't do A, you do B. So you can't make wudu, so you make tayammum, right? So there's all these discussions are intertwined. This is the art that we're learning. We are not learning answers, we're learning the system. Sorry, my son just showed me a 4-year-old kitten. It was irresistibly cute. Alhamdulillah. No systems involved. There is no matrices in his head. It's just fluff and milk. Alhamdulillah. The untrained, right? The untrained mind. So same thing here. بطلان التيمم إذا جمع بينه وبين الماء. What if you للتيمم, and you also you had to use water, and now there's enough water, right? We say, well, there's many scenarios where your tayammum will become invalid. And so accordingly, when that happens, you've now broken your wudu, so to speak, even though we would really say you didn't have wudu to begin with. Okay, let's read Bab al-Ghusl or Ghusl, and we will read it and then go to the sharh, inshallah. So it says, Bab al-Ghusli al-ightisalu naw'ani fardun wa sunnah. فالفرد عشرة أشياء with a fatha on the sheen. عشرة أشياء. So the rule is whenever you're dealing with something masculine, it's going to have a fatha on the sheen. Whenever you're doing something feminine, mutlaqan, then it's going to be sukun on the sheen. So عشرة أشياء versus عشر بنات, right? فالفرد عشرة أشياء غير منصرف. 5 منها على الرجال والنساء و5 منها على النساء دون الرجال. فأما التي على الرجال والنساء فالإنزال, right? Which is ejaculation. So can women ejaculate? Yes, they can. Does it happen very often? Not really. والتقاء الختانين, right? So this is intercourse. ونجاسة جميع البدن, right? What if your whole body was covered in urine, right? ونجاسة بعض البدن إذا أشكل بعضها موضعها. So I know that I have urine on some part of my body, but I don't have no clue. Like if you said front, back, up, down, no idea. So now because of the shak, you have to wash your whole body. وغسل الميت. وأما التي على النساء دون الرجال فالاغتسال من الحيض والنفاس والولادة والإسقاط وخروج مني الرجل من قبلها. Right? So it's fun, like just about wilada. I arrived on Wednesday, your Tuesday night. So it was Wednesday here. I walk in the door, like I hadn't been home for 6 weeks. I walk in the door and my son's like, oh my God, like Kyokai, the cat is like bleeding. And I'm like, what happened? Like literally she gave birth as we walked in the door. It was ajib, you know? It's like, you think about coincidences, like, you know, there's any time in that 6 weeks when she could give birth, but she gave birth like, you know, minutes or, you know, before we walked in the door, like basically, ajib, subhanAllah. فالاغتسال من الحيض والنفاس والولادة والإسقاط, right? So this is what's it called? Isqat is called when you lose a child. It's called miscarriage, right? وخروج مني الرجل من قبلها. Okay, on the condition that she reached orgasm. So if she didn't reach orgasm, then we're not going to say then we're going to say no, she didn't even reach orgasm. So therefore, whatever came out of her cannot be her own money, right? خير. And just a side note, right? A side note, you know, I remember, you know, I was teaching Reliance or whatever it was many, many, many years ago before I married. I had taught a class on living Islam. I was kind of like shadowing Sheikh Abdul Karim Yahya, and you know, it spoke about like sunnahs of intercourse and these kind of things. But obviously, not being married, you don't really kind of know what you're talking about, and these kind of things, right? So it's very important that when you're teaching fiqh, whenever you mention anything that's to do with sexuality or intercourse, you are actually conveying an Islamic idea about it. Okay, whether you like it or not. So, particularly when talking to sisters, right? So you're talking to a class, and you're like, I am talking about the halal and haram of prayer vis-a-vis wudu and ghusl. I am not talking about the importance of being sexually gratified or being married or being or making intercourse a mutually gratifying process, or I'm not talking about that. But whether you like it or not, you are, right? It's like you're talking to somebody and you're saying, in the Sharia, if you commit sodomy, you get executed. So in that process, you have just, whether you like it or not, you have just made like multiple statements to people. I'm a Western liberal person. I don't believe in execution. You know, I have a friend who's homosexual, and he explained to me his physical needs. I don't really understand why he should be stoned to death just because he was created that way. So you're not talking about those things, and the class is not about those things. They just ask you, please come in, give a class in our local masjid. But so whenever you talk about something sensitive, you do not have the license to not go into tangent. You can't do that. Does that make sense? Like you just mentioned polygamy, and then you didn't talk about polygamy. You can't do that. You just mentioned, oh, a slave. Hold on, you just said slave. You just said the word slave. Like you can't just say the word slave and then not talk about slavery in Islam. You can't do that. You spoke about I don't know, science and religion. This person has a problem. Science and religion. You have to talk about it, right? So you can cut out a lot of what you teach in a masjid. You say, you know what? I'm not even going to mention this because if you're not going to deal with it properly, then just drop it 100%. Does that make sense? Is everyone following? Because you can't just drop bombs on people and
Yes.
say, deal with it, right? Particularly sisters, right? And the many people who are sisters, meaning they think like sisters do, right? Like it's like they have problems, they have issues with, you know, for example, you talk about a weak hadith. You got to deal with it. You got to talk about the whole thing. Otherwise, don't say it at all. Don't bring it up, right? So a lot of people have a lot of sensitivities, and for real reasons, you can't just drop something on them and walk off and say, "Oh yeah, I wasn't talking about that, so it's not my responsibility," right? So you say, "I'm going to teach this class. Are you willing and slash able to jump in the deep end and deal with some of these complex issues? Yes or no? If you're not going to do it, just drop it. Like, don't even talk about it. You know, like you say, I'm not going to talk about this with sisters. So here, for example, you talk about this issue, خروج المني رجل من قبلها. She is thinking about a million things, right? So intercourse obviously is an extremely emotional thing, right? And not being sexually satisfied, right, is a really big issue. Like it's not a small issue, you know? And so you can't just not talk about that. So what you would just do is just don't talk about it. Don't even bring the topic up, and don't even talk about it at all if you're not willing to do it. And make your own textbook. You know, this is my own textbook. Like I'm going to talk to kids. I'm not going to talk about these things. I'm talking about those things. You know, because otherwise, like my mom, she was in my class, right? And she was like, you know, basically, you are making statements, you know, about really, really sensitive things, right? And you're just doing it in a very insensitive way simply because you're not dealing with it, if that makes sense, right? So I had no idea, like, okay, here's, you know, I don't know, like, so number one, there's a female there. Number two, you know, she had been married, was married, whatever, you know, it's like, so, you know, it's um she understands that you can't just like talk about these things. So I mean, she made this point, she's like, why is it that, for example, that the fuqaha always talk about intercourse in a very like cold way? It's like, well, that's our game. We're not here to talk about sex education, are we? We're not here to talk about I don't know, something else. We're not even talking about these things. We're talking about these things vis-a-vis, do I have to make ghusl or not? And being men, right? We're all men in this classroom. Like, yeah, it's not a problem. Just like divorce, we can just divorce our emotions from that discussion. You just put it to the side. You know, it's like not an issue, right? Like whatever, you know. Whereas most people can't do that, particularly sisters, right? They can't process in that way, and so you actually cause more harm than benefit. Does that make sense? So I remember like Dr. Jawad, Dr. Jawad Qurashi, he was saying like someone was asking him like, oh, we want to do the fiqh of marriage. Can you teach us reliance of the traveler? He said, just do the seerah, meaning look at people's lives, get an idea of what happened, see that there are functioning families and happy Muslims who are married, and then go from there. Not you know, the rules that are used in a court when everything goes wrong. Like that's not, it's kind of like painful, you know? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you do have a right to be silent, and you do have an obligation to be selectively vocal. And I had the benefit, I had the ease for like 15 years of teaching religious people. So I'm teaching people who have a religious network. Like if I said something that shocked them, it's not the end of the world. They're not going to leave Islam. Whereas you might not don't have that luxury. Because you're in America and you're talking in this masjid. You go, particularly you're on the East Coast half of you, right? So it's a bit easier. You go to the West Coast, it's not that easy. Because this is the first time this person has ever heard of a sheikh ever referring to anything about ghusl, ever. Right? There are people who pray in the masjid, they don't know about ghusl, honestly. Right? Deal with communities like, yeah, this is that she was never told about a period. She learned about period from her friends at school, and she never used to even buy tampons. She used to get them for her friend. Like that's the relationship. Like none of that is ever spoken about. You know? They're really scared. Like they don't even know what intercourse is, and they're really scared of it. And you've just said the word intercourse without even talking about it, you know? And you just drop a bomb on people. Yeah. And so it's pretty hard, right? In fact, it's like, so I mean, I had that shock, moving to California, that shock of like talking to the lay people is really hard. It's really difficult. It's really not easy. It's like so much easier teaching a class like this. But I'm just speaking through you and to you and saying you will be in this situation very soon. You are already in the West. You will be in a situation where, like, can you teach this halaqah for the kids? Can you teach me my fard al-ain? Can you talk to this thing about to me? And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm just saying this. I'm not saying this. You can't do that, right? You know, Murabit, I'm not sure if you're married, but like, like Musa, you're married. Like, it's like talking to the lay person is like a talking to your wife. Like they don't understand rules. They don't understand. They don't work in lines. They work in like circles. So you say one thing, there's another problem they have in their mind. A problem with it. Does Islam allow people to be wealthy? There's this problem in their life. Is it deen or dunya? Right? They don't have lines because they haven't been trained. Right? And so, yes, there'll be some sisters that can talk about this in a very simple way, but it's not like that, right? So it's a good idea as well to let's just limit the circle. Like, okay, I'm going to teach it just to these kind of people right now. And now, okay, I'm going to talk to these people, change the curriculum, change the book, change what you're going to talk about. Don't just say this is tradition, deal with it, because actually you'll harm people. Right? This is not useful. Right? So a class like my defemina class, that's really important, but even that is too hardcore. So, for example, things like the importance, right? Isn't it amazing that you find like Layth ibn Sa'ad, for those who listen to the class, right? Layth ibn Sa'ad, like making a dua, oh Allah, like help me perform well in intercourse to help my wife in her deen. That's a beautiful thing. And a woman needs to hear that, even if, she needs to hear that. The whole class is a bit too hardcore, right? I don't advise people listen to that, my defeminate class. Unless they kind of like have a teacher take it apart with them because it's like, or discussion, whatever, right? But, there's a lot of things they need to hear. But when you just hear like this without context, right? This is a key thing that Sheikh Faraz Rabbani would always like emphasize with us on Q&A, is like you can't just drop a bomb, right? Is circumcision or khitan is obligatory in the Shafi school for a convert woman? Yes. Minhaj al-Talibin. End of story. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. You can't do that because there's a whole thing of like, oh my God, I just became Muslim. Oh my God, female circumcision. That's like abusing people. You just made a statement. You've just told me that Islam believes in abusing women and Islam doesn't value the sexual experience of women. That's what you just told me. So I didn't say that. I just said it's obligatory. So yeah, but because you didn't explain it, that's what you told me. Right? You think gay people are evil. I didn't say that. Well, you just told me that. You just said they get executed. There's two different things. Right? So the world that we live in of fuqaha and fiqh is great. We say things like la talazum. Oh, well, this doesn't mean that necessarily, does it? But they don't think like that. They do talazum all the time. They think in waves, right? They think in waves. You said A, which means B, right? And it's like A does not mean B. It didn't say B, right? The untrained mind versus the trained mind, right? So it's very important. So it's difficult. So what I'm trying to say is either you're going to stop, let's talk about this, or we're not going to bring the topic up to begin with, right? Or we're going to cut things into sections, right? And maybe delay fiqh to a certain stage, or delay this book to a certain stage, or you're helping this person get from A to B to C. Concepts, right? A lot of concepts are lost on a lot of people. And it will take them years to even understand that. Even if you tell it to them in a very clear way, they still don't understand it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I think this is very like becomes very apparent whenever like taking classes like in person with the community about possibly sensitive topics, then as a tulab it becomes kind of aware of the knowledge of the community and everything else. So I think it is a very important skill, inshallah.
Even issue, for example, touching a woman. Basically, you just said that everyone's pedophiles. Because you said if I touch an 8-year-old, because of the potential of lust, it breaks my wudu. Like, oh, basically you're a pedophile then. You know what I'm saying? So don't even bring the topic up. It's better for someone to not even know about the hukam than to start having doubts about everyone's a pedophile, As opposed to, so that's why like, classes like Sira, it's like, oh, where are we? Right? Do I identify with this world called Islam? Right? As opposed to getting into the fiqh of it without a context. Right? So either you're going to sit down and say, let's talk about this. Sexuality, this, and then move on, right? Or drop it completely. It's better people go and touch their wives or touch somebody, go shake hands with the opposite sex, even though it's haram. It's better that they do that than start having wasawis, unresolved wasawis about pedophilia in Islam, particularly when there is pedophilia in Muslim communities, right? Like, imagine I'm talking to this girl who was sexually abused in her Quran class by her Quran teacher, and now you're saying, actually, all men are like that, haha, and move on. It's like, whoa, like, you just dropped this thing into her subconscious, which is extremely painful, and just moved on without explaining anything, right? So what you want to tell her is you should have been protected because people should have been cognizant of the fact that men are attracted to women, and you were too old to be in front of that man, and that man shouldn't have been in your presence, and he shouldn't have been allowed to defile you in that way, and you have a right to do this, and there's a healthy way that people experience their sexuality, and this can be put in this way, as opposed to, oh yeah, we're all perverts actually, move on, haha. You know what I'm saying? And what happened to you is normal, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like you have to deal with something properly. You can't just drop it on them. Okay. Okay, so it says والاغتسال المسنون فاثنان وعشرون نوعا. So he mentions here there are, what is it? 22 sunnah ghusls. الاغتسال الجمعة والاستسقاء والخسوف والكسوف والعيدين الفطر والأضحى والكافر إذا أسلم. No, because what it mentions, Ammar, is it says, so the hukam says, a man sleeps with his wife, ejaculates, and then his ejaculate comes out of her. We say that if she reached orgasm, then she has to make ghusl. So she makes ghusl after that, after intercourse, but then after her ghusl, some of his semen came out of her. So we say, sister, did you reach orgasm while having intercourse? And she says, no. Okay, so then she doesn't have to make ghusl. End of the hukam. Okay? Does it make sense? So now, right, Now we say we go and ask his sister, sister, do you ever reach orgasm? She's like, what's an orgasm? That's a problem because, right? That's a problem, sister. Like, okay, so it doesn't always happen. It often happens. It's often not the case that a woman reaches orgasm during intercourse, but it has to happen sometime or some way because that's a physical need, So now you just open this whole can of worms. She's been married for 2 years. And she's like, it's okay, but it's not okay. It's okay, but it's not okay. It's okay. Previously, for example, she was not Muslim and she used to have a sex life. So now you have not just you didn't resolve her problem and saying, sister, you have a right to be sexually active and to be sexually satisfied, and let's sit down with your husband and find out practical ways where this can happen, etc. Instead of doing that, you've now made her doubt her whole iman by just dropping a bomb on her and just being technical. Does that make sense? Like it's like really not a joke. Like some of these things, like it's really not a joke. There's astaghfirullah, there's like a website called something like there's like websites dedicated for married women to cheat on their husbands. Like it's an issue. Like it's a real issue. And if you go and sit with like sisters talk about this stuff all the time. They make riba of their husbands. They share private things about their husbands. Like unless you're married to somebody very religious, it's going to happen, right? And so it's a very important thing, right? Like it's a really important thing to people, and you didn't solve it, whereas you should solve it. You take 20 lessons, not a problem. Sit there and talk about how should it happen, how should things do this. It's private, so yes, you have a problem, but you shouldn't share too much with other people. No, you can't go and share it with your friends, right? So this is a classic conversation, right? That sisters, they will share. So sisters, they make more riba than we do. We do other haram things, may Allah protect us. But they make more riba than we do because that's how they bond. And they are less private and they share more things than we do, right? Or in different ways. So she's anxious about something and she's like, this happened, that happened. And then it gets on the conversation like, do you reach orgasm or not? It's like, no. How long does it last? Right? These are really big things, like really big things, right? And it should be dealt with properly with the idea that I am a female, I have a right to these things. I am not married to a sex god, that's fine. And I got to be realistic. And, but like there should be a way so that you feel happy. Like I am not just here being used as an animal. Whereas you go to many places in the world, like that's how it is. The phrase, just lie back and think of Britain. Have you heard of that phrase, guys?
I have not.
It's a little different here, but yes.
Yeah. So what it means is basically as a woman, it means something else like just chill out and just think about long term. But what it means, like what it says is during intercourse, just lie back. You are just passive, you're not involved, and just think, oh, you're gonna have kids, your kids are gonna have kids, you're building Britain. It's like don't worry about it. Right? What does that do now? You now make a fissure, you now make a gap, right, between husband and wife. That's what it does. Like when they're not sexually satisfied in their marriage, and that's not trying to be solved. It's not that I'm perfect. It's not things have to be perfect. It's that the other person, the other person is trying to work with you, and they acknowledge that and they're trying to help you as opposed to they don't care and you just feel used. So now you have this gap, and this gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's just this pain, and it becomes this agony, right? And then it becomes this horrible situation where these people like hate each other, right? And then she's going to go and do literally what the heck she wants. So yeah, I'm going to cheat on him, of course. Fantastic, right? And so now it's like now in their mind, it's either religious, which is not being sexually satisfied, or licentious, which is like, I'm going to do everything possible and impossible everywhere, right? I'm going to go and join some online orgy and see everybody me doing stuff with everybody, So it's like, sister, it's not like that. You can be You can be a sexually satisfied, religious, dignified woman and love every moment of it. Fantastic. But that was never explained to her ever. Never. And how did you cause that? By just dropping a bomb on them. Does that make sense? And many people have these issues. I remember being in Jordan, wearing a green thobe that was somewhat olive colored. They're like, everyone's freaking out that I'm Daesh. Like, are you that scared and that intimidated? The answer is they are. In their mind is like, I'm either religious and ISIS, or I am irreligious. Like, there's two worlds. And it's like, it's not like that. You know, people don't know that Muslims think. They're like, you either think and you're intelligent and irreligious, or you don't think and you're religious. So now you're caught in this. There's lots of people have lots of fitness in their life, deep things that are really shaking their iman, and you just dropped the bomb and left. Right? You can't do that. So choose your battles, and if that means not dealing with the topic, just leave it out. You don't have to talk about slaves. You don't have to talk about concubines. You don't have to talk about, I remember the sister, I mean, she went through a divorce. She came up to me like, she said, is it true that in the Shafi school, a woman only has the right to have intercourse once? I said, yes. I was like, that's the most stupid answer ever. That means qada'an, right? Qada'an, she got married. Her husband wasn't able to do anything. Within 6 months, he was. And then after that, he wasn't. So now that the judges say, I can't annul the marriage on that basis, right? You have had intercourse once, so there we go, right? That's qada'an, right? But now diyanatan, in terms of like, can he literally say like, yeah, I'm able to sleep with you or to do something else with you if I'm not able to be, maybe has problems, whatever, able to do something else with you to help you be sexually stimulated and sexually satisfied, but I don't want to deal with it. And on top of that, I'm doing what is right. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's like the wrong answer. So you can't just drop things on people, particularly things that are very sensitive, right? Can't just do that. Not wearing hijab. Anybody who doesn't wear hijab is a bad Muslim. You can't just drop it on people. You need to help them. Like, help me. I'm a 15-year-old girl. I live in this world. Deal with it. Like, give me the whole picture. Like, what does this mean? Right? What does this mean? What are you trying to say when I'm not a good Muslim? Like, I should, like, I should, what are you trying to tell me that you're trying to say I should leave Islam? Is that what you mean? Or what do you mean by that? Or what do you mean by halal and haram? Right? So there's many issues where it's like, actually people don't even understand who Allah is or anything, right? And you just drop bombs. So I'm saying either deal with it or don't bring it up to begin with. Be selective, edit things out, white lie, not a problem. Just drop it because you're going to cause way too much problem if you don't deal with it properly. Okay. وَالْكَافِرِ إِذَا أَسْلَمَ. Right? Obviously, if he's done something that causes ghusl, then he has to make ghusl anyway. Excuse me. وَالْمَجْنُونُ إِذَا أَفَاقَ. Excuse me. Okay. Excuse me. Excuse me. وعن, meaning because of. I'm just hiccuping here. Go ahead, Ammar.
Might have asked this question previously, but with respect to the kafir who accepts Islam, like practically speaking, most people will have
Mm-hmm.
had a cause for ghusl like in their life. So how do we deal with that?
Just tell him, so what we're going to do is we're going to go home. We're going to have you're going to do your own baptism. And baptism, we do this every time. Whenever you become Muslim, you should do your own baptism. You should do this, and then you're like, okay, what about his niyyah? It's like, Habibi, forget about his niyyah for now, right? Because we know that if you made a ghusl that's ihtiyatan, that would actually count. I'm not sure who knows, maybe I need to make ghusl, so I just go make ghusl. And then you realize you did have to make ghusl, that wouldn't count, right? So, but don't worry about it. Just tell him go and have a shower, and yeah, and then come back and then come back, go and have a shower. Then we're gonna sit down and I'll show you how to pray. Just pray with me, Does that make sense? Excuse me, just eating. Okay. وعن غسل ميت, and meaning because of, right? Because you washed a dead person, you should make ghusl, right? So this here هذا أحد الطريقين. So what does that mean? طريق. So this is in terms of based on one presentation of the positions of the school. So you say الطريق الأول الطريق الثاني, right? So you can say, give me a presentation, right, of the school. So this is a bit like, like AI is always learning, right? So you go AI Google or Chat GPT, ask it a question and ask the same question again. Does it answer it in the same way? Like immediately?
No.
Right? Because it's always updating, right? Like what's happening to Venezuela? Every minute there's going to be more things that's going to be feeding from, right? What's happening in Venezuela and right? So it's a bit like that. Like I go and look at the school and say, Fried, find out what the positions are on this issue and present it to me. And you go and do the same thing. It's different. That's called the tariq, right? Like how you present it. So it says هذا أحد الطريقين وهو أن الغسل من غسل أو غسل الميت سنة والطريقة الثاني أن فيه قولين. Right, so one representation is it is sunnah. One representation is there are two opinions, which is one that is sunnah, which is the jadid, and the qadim that is obligatory. Does that make sense? So it's not the same as two positions. It's so when you talk about the madhab, well, madhab kada, right? What does that mean? That means the correct representation. الطريق الأول الطريق الثاني, right? Like one representation, another representation, right? How it's been presented. Does that make sense? So in one book, it presents it as Jadid and Qadim. Another book, it presents it as two Jadid positions that go against each other, right? And if you can imagine now, if you go back to the schools within the schools, right? We had the Marawiza and the Marawiza and the Iraqiyin, right? The Khurasaniyin and the Iraqiyin. They're going to have their own way of representing this discussion and their own way of representing the debate on this discussion. Does that make sense? And then they're also their own tarjih. Right? So someone like Imam Nawawi, Rafi, they're going to be like, what is the different turuq, right? How it's represented, how this whole discussion is represented. Is it that there's three positions, or is it that there are two positions and the second position has two variables? You know what I'm saying? And you're like, oh, so now what's going on here? Everyone's following? So this is this term al-madhab wa tariq, right? One representation, two presentations. Well, madhab, i.e. the correct representation. Everyone's following me? Musa, Jawad, Ammar, Murabit. Murabit, did I meet you in Chicago?
I had to, unfortunately, that was when break started, so I left before I could meet you.
Okay, no worries.
Did you meet Arthman or like any of the others, like Anzar?
I'm at Anzad, yes. I know
Okay.
Anzad from the Bay Area anyway. Okay, خير والإحرام والدخول okay والإحرام ودخول الحرم والوقوف بجمع أي عرفة. So that's not عرفة. أي مزدلفة. مزدلفة and الوقوف بعرفة وفي 3 أيام من قبل الرمي ودخول مكة ولطواف الزيارة وللحجامة. right? He says, نقل هذا والذي بعده عن المصنف. So Imam Nawawi quotes this from al-Mahamili. So he's saying basically Mahamili, so when he's quoting him, he's basically saying he's the only one who says that. So Mahamili is pretty important. His books are pretty important, right? So here he's saying he's quoting the author on this, right? والحجامة ودخول الحمام والاستحداد وللإغماء, which is the same as right, for وكل حال تغير فيه البدن, right? One thing he didn't mention here is في حالة الاجتماع بالناس. So here, what's the difference between having a shower and making ghusl? So you say, I'm having a shower, but I stink, or I need to be clean. So I'm gonna now do a ritual ghusl. So I'm shifting it from doing a general act of worship, which is being clean, to a specific act of worship, which is now a ritual, right? Similarly, al-ijtima' bin nas, I'm going to be around other people, right? I'm going to go to a place with lots of people. It's sunnah to make ghusl. Okay, which is والاغتسال يشتمل على ستة أشياء فرض ونفل وسنة وأدب وكراهية وشرط فأما الفرض فثلاث أشياء النية والتعميم في كل بدن واستتابع في أحد القولين, right? The same discussion, right? تتابع meaning موالاة. وأما النفل فشيء واحد وهو الاغتسال مرتين وأما السنة فثمانية أشياء التسمية, saying بسم الله, right? With the shower curtain across or that, not in a place where there's a toilet seat. وغسل اليدين قبل إدخالهما الإناء ثلاثا وأن يغسل ما به من الأذى ثم يتوضأ وضوءه للصلاة, making complete wudu, ثم يحثي على رأسه ثلاث حثيات, put water on your head, من ماء, وأن يخلل شعر رأسه ولحيته, وأن يبدأ بشقه الأيمن, وأن يمر يديه على جميع بدنه وهو الدلك, right? And it's makruh not to do this. ويقول في آخره أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله اللهم اجعلني من التوابين واجعلني من الطاهرين واجعلني من عبادك الصالحين, right? Very important thing like wudu. One of the most important sunnahs of ghusl and wudu is al-hudur, right? You are doing a ritual. If you can imagine you are a sahabi who had killed somebody, who had done haram things and has just become Muslim and said, Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of Allah, how can I save myself from the hellfire? He says, well, if you become Muslim, all your sins are forgiven. And if you make ghusl, all the sins will be washed off your body. So now you're like, it's like a very deep thing, right? I haven't watched it. I haven't read it. Sorry. What's the book? Dostoevsky, what's it called? That whole book about guilt and things like that. What's it called? Can't remember what it is. But like guilt is a big thing, right? Like people feel guilt, right? And that like it's a big thing also in the Christian tradition, right? Like, or even just like being a bad person, right? Musa, like in the Hispanic mentality, like you're either a priest or you're a sinner, It's like this is how you are. Like we're all bad people, we're like bad people. So like, you're born crime punishment, right? So it's like this kind of mentality is like, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually very kind and he gives you all these ways to actually rid yourself 100% of all these sins, Khalas, you've done all these things in the past, you said all these things, we're now going to wash these things away from you, right? So we have to be cognizant of what we're doing. Otherwise, what's the point? You have a dead religion. Do not have a dead religion, right? It's very important. So we should feel the spiritual process of wudu, and we should feel the spiritual process of ghusl, and we should feel the spiritual process of prayer. If you're not feeling anything, it means you're not really doing anything. And if you can't feel it, at least try and make it feel it, right? It's like you're telling, saying sorry to somebody, but you don't really mean it. Well, at least try. Right? أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله وأما الأدب فثمانية أشياء أن يستقبل القبلة on the proviso that you're covered. Otherwise, you're facing the Qibla with your awra exposed. You are now doing something haram in the Hanafi school. So don't do that. Right? So when you're making ghusl, you should have some have something in the shower that you can cover yourself with, right? Like something like swimming trunks and all that. What do you call it in America? Swimming shorts?
Swimming trunks.
Swimming trunks. Wow. Finally, we speak the same language. Alhamdulillah. Or at least here it's funny in Malay they drop T's at the end of words. So like so a lift is a lift. They're like take the lift. What's a lift? Right? So we say lift, you guys say elevator. Right? Alhamdulillah. So swimming trunks, fantastic. I feel much connected. SubhanAllah, I just gave bay'ah to Trump. I just got my citizenship 3 weeks ago, and now look what the country's doing. May Allah protect us. Okay, وأن يستقبل القبلة. SubhanAllah. Alhamdulillah, it's very nice when people show their true colors, right? It's nice, like you should see evil for what it is. Like imagine, that man who's gonna be cut in half by the Dajjal. Like it's easy. Like this is the Dajjal. Like, it's clear, It's hard when evil things are not so evil. Like it's hidden. That's when the shaitan really gets a lot of grip, a lot of people. But the end of time is like good is good, bad is bad is very easy. It's like this is just how it is. Soon it's going to be not like, oh, look how people dress in the street. It's like no, it's just like people will like we know that people will be committing zina in the street. Like you'll walk out the street and like that's what people will be doing. Yeah. So it's good. It's a nice thing when you see true colors and just see things as they are. It makes things much easier. وأما الأدب فثمانية أشياء: أن يستقبل القبلة، وأن يقعد في مكان لا يرجع الماء عليه ولا يترشش. Right. وأن يجعل الإناء عن يساره، وأن يكون واسعا فإن كان واسعا فعن يمينه، وأن لا يستعين بغيره إلا إن حاجة. Right. So you're sitting there and someone's washing your arms for you. We did all this discussion. فإن استعان جعله عن يمينه ويبدأ بأعلى بدنه، وأن يكون في سترة. You should be covered, right, as we mentioned. So that's a recommended thing for us. In the Hanafi school, if you're going to face the Qibla with your awra exposed, it's considered haram. وأما الكراهية فشيئان: الإسراف في الماء. So now you have to be careful. Are you having a hot, long shower for a reason, or are you just being lazy? No, I might have a genuine shoulder pain. I'm super, super stressed, right? Like I'm really, really stressed. And my doctor said, stand under the hot shower for a good 10 to 15 minutes, right? And this is going to help me relax. I just did exams, Ammar or whoever else, you're really like, I don't want to say or do something wrong. I'm just like, I need to calm myself down. So there's a big difference between enjoying and wasting, right? They're not the same thing, right? So just have a long shower just because you're daydreaming. That's wrong. Right? Get in, get out. Al-israf fil ma walau kana ala. So subhanallah, one of the Salaf, they heard about public bath houses where they have hot water, and they're like, "What's that? Why would you have hot water?" That's how kind of a bid'ah. It's not really the way of the Prophet, right? The Prophet just made ghusl in his house or made ghusl outside. It's like, whatever. I remember I used to go surfing, so I surfed in the Irish Sea, and it's cold, like really cold. And then we'd come out and we have a cold shower, but the cold shower was warm in respect to the sea, right? So we have to understand that we're pretty gay compared to a lot of people of the past. Like, oh, it has to be warm water. Oh, it has to be this long shower. Oh, I need this kind of thing, right? Like, I had this discussion with my wife. She's like, there's a big difference between, what is it? Shampoo and body wash. I'm like, bro, it's like, in a man's world, like, who cares? It's like, whatever. Like, so, like, you have a man who's like, no, it's conditioner. Like, a conditioner versus body wash versus shampoo is like, dude, anything that's a detergent will do, right? So, we shouldn't be too decadent, meaning like the shower has to be this temperature. I have to be in for this long. I have to do my hair like this. Like, bro, chill. You'll be okay. You'll be dead soon. Don't worry. Right? Al-israf fil ma', so wasting water, unless you have a reason. ولو كان على شاطئ البحر, right? وزيادة على الثلاث, right? So now this person, right? They make sure they take a 1 minute and 36-second shower, but then they drive an F2250, right? Like Ammar, right? So you drive an F-250 and you're telling me like, yeah, I'm very, very careful about not wasting water. It's like, dude, I'm joking. I'm not. Bro doesn't drive an F-250. You guys know what an F-250 is, right? Or a Toyota Tundra. You guys know, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So yeah, so as a Texan, right? So here's this problem, like in as a Texan or as an American, it's like everything is big. It doesn't have to be big, you know? So like in England, all our cars are small, right? In Europe, all the cars are small. 1.4 liter engine, 1.6 liter engine, 1.8, that's really big, right? And so, you know, you're at college, like, yeah, just get any car, just got like a, you know, Toyota, I don't know, Avalon, whatever, like 2.2 engine. Like, why'd you have a 2.2 engine? Right. So obviously the situations like I had a 3.2 engine at one point because I just bought the cheapest car I could find. Right. That's different. But we have to understand this is a lifestyle, right? So the American lifestyle is less in line with the Sunnah than the British lifestyle, right? So Mr. Bean is more on the Sunnah than Mr. Beast, right? There's a quote for you, right? Be on the madhab of Mr. Bean, not on the madhab of Mr. Beast, right? So that is it's a way of living and functioning, you know. Disposable plates. Yeah, good. um, yeah, so look after your body. That's true. That's true, Joad. So particularly in America, like you have your standards of what is healthy is really low, right? So you're gonna be like, no, I'm buying this supernatural stuff that costs 5 times the price. Fine. You know, that's okay. So if it's about I don't want to harm myself, that's not decadence. Decadence is what's the phrase? There's a phrase for it, like men who are like really into like their hair and stuff like that. It's a phrase for it. It's called no, they have to have like very particular bags and particular shoes, like 5 pairs of shoes. It's called a there's a word for it. But like, you know, you shouldn't be like that. That's not good. Like being very particular about how long you're in the shower for, what kind of temperature, what kind of soap do you need, which soap do you put on first, right? That's it's a bit gay, number one. And number two, it's just very un-Islamic. Well, it's un-Islamic because it's gay, it's un-Islamic because it's wasteful. Let's just say whatever, you know. My dad told me that for said, you know, I was gonna get married, and I said, oh, I asked this sister and I asked that sister, you know, can you help me get married? My dad was like, Free, don't be gay, just go and get your wife, you know, just go and find her, just go and grab her somewhere. Don't be, you know. My dad was very, very latif, so rahimahullah, like very, very gentle with his words. But he's like, alhamdulillah. So there's a lot, you know. Ibn Khaldun makes this point. Forget my tangent, but Ibn Khaldun makes this point. He says basically like whenever the you know Islam came to a people who are semi-nomadic, right? So he came to people who are like not even farm people. They're like between hunter gatherers, you know, between Bedouin and farm. That's the kind of world they live. And then suddenly you know you move from the Plains Indians to Texas and from Texas to New York, you know, and it's like what happened to you? Like it's actually a degradation, right? So the Prophet was talking to people who were like semi-nomadic, right? Somewhere between the Texan ranch guy and the Plains Indian, somewhere in between. But then you become this person who's very decadent and you want like particular things and particular this and particular that. Like, bro, it doesn't matter. You know, it's like, you know, I have tea. Like, why do I have tea? Is it because I'm British? It's like, no, it's like just caffeine. Like whatever will keep me awake. I don't really care. Right? It's not a thing. Like I have to have this kind of coffee or this kind of tea. It's like whatever. As long as it's Earl Grey, it doesn't matter. Lady Grey, it doesn't matter. Right? I'm joking. Was the editor ala thalath, right? Not doing more than three. Right. So what I'm trying to say then is you take the letter of the law, which is don't wash yourself more than 3 times in the shower, and then you go along and buy a gigantic car or, you know, have like, you know, a half pounder or something like that. you know, of meat or whatever it is, like things that like why do you have these things, right? We have to be very, very careful, you know, with our time and money and not be wasteful, right? So as the Sheikh said, be on the madhab of Mr. Bean, not of Mr. Beast. That's a very difficult thing, Ammar, right? That's a very difficult thing. So raising your wife, quote me on that, Musa, the second quote, right? Is like raising your kids, right? It's like you're either too strict or too easygoing, you know? So I don't know. It's tricky. So like I know there's one sheikh, you know, the sheikh he was there's like a proper uh proper son of a gun sheikh. He's from the Bronx. Um he's from the Bronx and he like at 35 he kind of like gave up on life. He's like this is stupid. Doesn't make any sense. I'm making tons of money but this is stupid. So he went off to Africa to find the meaning of life and then he goes up no, you know, and he's in the middle somewhere in Central Africa. I don't know where he is. He ends up going north and he goes to finds himself in southern Egypt. In southern Egypt, he becomes Muslim, right? Gets married, and then gets married again in Jordan. So I knew him in Jordan. Well, I knew him first in Egypt and then in Jordan, Sheikh Ihab, rahimahullah. And you know, so one of the things he used to say, like he used to say some funny, like he would intentionally not give his wives washing machines. This is why, because I just need to keep them busy, otherwise they're going to cause trouble, you know. So, you know, it's like hardcore, you know. So that's one, you know, he had an argument with his wife once, and his wife's like, "That's it, I'm going to tell the sheikh." And he says, "I am your sheikh." You know, it was like a kind of an Arnie moment, right? So this guy, he's from the Bronx. He's like quarter Apache, quarter Italian, half Italian, something like that. Yeah. Um, but it's, you know, wallahu alam. But later on, he had more money. His life was much more comfortable. It was, you know, maybe he was immature at that time. Maybe he was too hard. Who knows? So basically, with your wife, you're either too easy or you're too hard. With your kids, you're either too easy or you're too hard. You know. And so, Allahu alam. One nice thing is to do is like, sister, this is your money. You can do whatever you want with it, right? This is your money. You can do what she wants to go and spend, buy her own, do her own things. That's not your responsibility. Don't meddle with how she wants to do things, right? But the issue is like, yeah, like why did you, you know, why did you do that? So it is a problem. So it is a haqq that a wife has on you that we treat her when we encourage her to have zuhud in the dunya, right? That's a haqq that she has. Just like your child's like, Daddy, why did you make me a spoiled brat? Similarly, like your wife will tell you in Judgment Day, like, why didn't you raise me? You know, why didn't you guide me? You know? So at the time, she'll be like, back off, bro. That's what she'll tell you. Later on, she'll say, why didn't you, why didn't you guide me? Just like your teenager will be like, Dad, get out of my face. And later on, be like, Dad, why didn't you help me? You know, it was too difficult. The kind of things I was dealing with was too hard. Why didn't you help me? Like, why didn't you take me out of that situation? Right. So they'll do that, right? Your wife will be like, man, you're so cheap. And later on, she's like, man, why did you like spend so much money on the dunya? Right. So, you know, it's not easy. And particularly if you marry somebody who's wealthier than you, right? You marry somebody who's wealthier than you, she actually might have a haqq to like more things in the house, you know? Like you're like, oh, I don't have a washing machine. Like, are you joking? Or like you don't have, I don't know. The house is really small. It's not a normal kind of situation, right? So that can get a bit complex. Khair. And then he says, Babu ma yumna'u al-junub minhu. That's the next topic. Okay, let's go back to my wife was here, she'd been laughing her head off, like, Sheikh Farid, you're the marriage counselor, give me a break. So I'm not a marriage counselor, by the way. I talk about things to do with Islam, but marriage counseling is something different. That's a speciality. Right? I'm not a marriage counselor. Okay, where do we get to? So we're on to Bab al-Ghusl, right? Bab al-Ghusli. Okay, so he says, وهو بفتح الغين أفصح وأشهر من ضمها. It is غسل, not غسل. أفصح وأشهر من ضمها غسل. Right? مصدر غسل يغسل غسلا. Right? راجع يرجع رجعا. To return something. رجع يرجع رجعا. Right? The default pattern for the فعل المتعدي, a verb that has, he says here, a مصدر قياسي للفعل متعدي. Right? The normal قياسي, the normal default مصدر pattern for a verb that has an object is فعل. Right? وهو غسل إن كان المصدر بفتح الغين. Right? As for غسل and غسل, that's not the default. All right. So what is famous among the fuqaha is ghusl, but that doesn't make it correct. Right? The muhaddithin, they say rahoya, but his name is rahawayhi. Right? Zanjoya, but this is zanjuwayhi. Does that make sense? Right. So what the fuqaha say, so what does that mean then? Is a concept is we take fiqh from the fuqaha, we don't take lugha from the fuqaha. Right? We take hadith from the muhaddithin. So from we need to know our specialities and how the matrix works. If you're going to comment on the hadith vis-a-vis halal haram, you're going to be a mujtahid or you're going to be a naqil and a mujtahid. Right? I need the faqih to talk about the fiqh of the hadith, but I need the muhaddith to talk about the ilal of the hadith, or the different narrations, or these kind of things. I need the lughawi to explain this. So at-Tirmidhi, for example, in his Shama'il, explains some linguistic discussions. He's on authority. But okay, why would I listen to him? Because he's authority in hadith, not authority in lugha. Right? So every single maidan has its fursan. Every single arena of knowledge, field of knowledge, has its knights, has its special imams. Right? You can't cross those lines. Does that make sense? And in reality, you need to be familiar, you need to be intermediate level in Nahu in order to benefit fiqh, to add to fiqh. Intermediate level hadith, intermediate level, right? To do these things. One of the first books of Imam Nawawi is Tahdhib what is it? Al-Asma. So he does basically a sharh on the what is it? On the Tanbih, where he's just focusing on language. Just what's the word? Right? What are the words? Right? Just defining this word. What does that word mean? How do you say it? It's a plural, whatever. Right? Okay. So ومن ضمها okay من ضمها بمعنى الاغتسال وبكسرها اسم لما يغتسل به. Right? الغسل is a detergent من سدر ونحوه وبضم اسم للماء الذي يغتسل به. الغسل means the water that you use. Right? وهو بالمعنيين الأولين لغة سيلان الماء على الشيء, water flowing over something. وشرعا سيلانه على جميع البدن بنية كما سيأتي. So now this definition excludes something that Muhammadi mentioned, Ibn al-Mahalimi mentioned, which is removing najasa from your whole body. Right? He says that one of the types of ghusl is when you have najasa over your whole body. Okay, Habibi, if I had ghusl over my whole body and you pushed me into a pond, I had najasa all over my whole body, you pushed me into a pond, and I came out, would I be pure? Or it rained on me? Yes, right? Because it's a hukm wada'i, it's not a hukm taklifi, right? And so that's not a ghusl. So he mentioned one type of ghusl is, he mentioned two types. He said, what if you had najasa on you, on your whole body? You have to wash your whole body, so therefore it's a ghusl. No, that's not ghusl, because biniyatin, there's no niyyah. So سيلانه على جميع البدن نعم, سيلانه على جميع البدن بنية لا. So those two scenarios, which were, one was what if you had najasa on you and you didn't know where it was? You have to wash your whole body. That's true. But that's not called ghusl. That's called izalat najasa. Make sense? Okay. It says وموجبه ستة جنابة وتحصل بخروج منيه أولا من طريقه المعتاد أو من تحت صلب الرجل وترائب المرأة. Right, so somewhere underneath your private parts. So some semen came out of your shoulder. You don't have to make ghusl. Right? Right? So semen came out of the side of someone's testicles. وَالْمُعْتَادُ مُنْسَدْ, and the urethra was blocked. Okay? Yes, that's fine. But the urethra was not blocked. Right? And it came out of someone that's not beneath their private parts, then doesn't count. لخبر الصحيحين. Where is it? Where is it continuing? Am I missing a page or something? لخبر
I think it
الصحيحين.
was,
Go ahead.
yeah, I think the next page on the left side under the line, I think the في ذلك, I think is the continuation of the previous sentence.
So it doesn't actually mention. I'm looking for the hadith itself. It's not in quoting the hadith. It says لخبر الصحيحين في ذلك. That's all. Right? Because of the hadith in Bukhari Muslim concerning that. That's all. Okay. وخرج بمنيه مني غيره. Right? Somebody else's mani coming out doesn't count. و
وبأولا
though it says بأولا. Where did he say أولا?
يخرج منيه أولا at the top of the next page.
وموجبه أولا. Okay, there. وخروج منيه أولا. Right? And he says أولا. That where is that? منيه الخارج ثانيا بإن استدخله ثم خرج فلا غسل بهما. So the semen came out. You put it back in your urethra and then it came out again. That doesn't cause a ghusl. أو دخول حشفة أو قدرها من فاقدها فرجا. So that حشفة is the head of the male private parts. So that was cut off, that person. The person had the head of his private parts cut off. So then that amount of the rest of his private parts was inserted into farjan. قبلا أو دبرا. Right? ولو من ميت أو بهيمة, etc. So, vaginal or anal intercourse with a living being or an animal. So again, this is an example. You just drop this on somebody. And you're trying to say, oh, what, Muslims are allowed to have anal sex with animals? Like, I'm not saying that. So, well, that's what you just said. You have to make ghusl. Right? It's like astaghfirullah, I'm not saying that. So, well, explain yourself then, right? So you can't, this is the point I was trying to make before, you cannot just drop a bomb on somebody and say deal with it. Right? ولو من ميت أو بهيمة وتعبيري بما ذكر أولى من قوله إنزال. ها؟ أو التقاء الختانين. Right? So إنزال is something else, and التقاء السكين. Right? So التقاء الختانين does not include anal intercourse. Right? Similar thing, I remember they mentioned it's in Bukhat al-Mustashideen. So it says, you know, a saghir can recite Quran without wudu and without ghusl. You're like, huh? How could a saghir need to make ghusl? You know? How could like somebody who had not reached puberty need to make ghusl? So like, don't say that in front of people because it's possible, right? May Allah protect us. The kid was raped or something like that. May Allah protect us, right? It's like, you know, so you can't just say things and just like leave them like that. So as I mentioned before, either don't say it or deal with it properly. وموت لمسلم غير شهيد لما سيأتي في الجنائز وحيض لآية فاعتزلوا النساء في المحيض أي الحيض. So mahid, he is explaining as not as the time or place, but meaning menstruation itself. It's a masdar mimi, right? Masdar mimi like maghfira, like matab, mataba, like marhaban, right? So these are masdars that begin with a meme, right? As opposed to mahid, meaning the place of menstruation or the time of menstruation, right? فَاعْتَزِلُوا النِّسَاءَ فِي الْمَحِيض, avoid women in the place of menstruation. فَاعْتَزِلُوا النِّسَاءَ فِي الْمَحِيض, avoid women during the time of menstruation, right? As an ism makan or ism zaman. ونفاس لأنه دم حيض مجتمع ونحو ولادة من إلقاء علقة أو مضغة ولو بلا بلل, right? So a miscarriage, right, on the condition that there's some kind of human form there. Not, for example, a miscarriage that's very, very early on, where it basically, it will be just like so for some women have miscarriage very early on, nothing that will be nothing physical is really going to come out. It's just liquids, right? So the baby was like the size of like the size of a raisin, right? Like she's not going to even notice it, right? Whereas a miscarriage, for example, way later on, yes. So the point is it has to have going to make in here. Here we go. He says, ولا بد من إخبار القوابل, wet nurses, بأن كلا من العلقة والمضغة أصل الآدمي. So a specialist would be like, yeah, that's a human being, right? What came out, that was a small embryo, as opposed to just blood, right? Does that make sense? So getting pregnant. So basically, so here's a woman. Do I have to make ghusl after if you have a miscarriage? Yes, if it's developed such that what came out was identifiable as an embryo, right, as a fetus. But otherwise, no, right? So if it's very early on, no, she doesn't have to make ghusl. Okay. يا رب استغفر الله. لأن الولد something. لأن الولد something. ونحوه, I think. لأن الولد ونحوه مني منعقد. So it's basically mani, right? So the Shafis, we say a child is mani. That's why mani is pure, right? Because it's the same thing. ويعتبر في الموجب من هذه الثلاثة وخروج المني الانقطاع, that actually has to stop it, so the child is on its way out. It has to come out. The mani has to come out, right? والقيام إلى الصلاة ونحوها, that you now need to pray, otherwise it's not going to be obligatory. أي ولو حكما ليشمل إذا دخل الوقت ولم يرد فعله فإنه يجب عليه الغسل فورا وجوبا مخيرا, right? So what happens now? Like, what do you mean it's obligatory for me to make ghusl? So this beginning of dhuhr now. I have to make ghusl? Yes, you have to make ghusl. The obligation begins now, and you can choose any moment in dhuhr time to do that, right? But it's not that you're not obliged to do it yet, right? It's wajib muwassa', wujub mukhayyar, right? So the difference between I'm not obliged to do that yet, as opposed to you are obliged to do it, but you have between now and then to do it. Does that make sense? ونجاسة بدن أو بعضه واشتبه عليه تنزيها عنها اللي تصح He says وتبعت في ذكر هذا الأصل ولم يذكره الأكثر لأنه ليس من موجب الغسل بل لإزالة النجاسة حتى لو كشط جلده حصل الفرض, right? So you had urine all over your body. You scratched the top layer of skin off. So now you don't have urine all over your body. So there we go. Right. So he said, I mentioned it anyway, but you know. But the interesting scenario is this, right? So najasa badan wa ba'dahu washtabaha alayhi, right? So you don't know where it is, right? So these are these useful discussions of like, I don't know what's going on. So I don't know that there's najasa on me. You don't have to wash your body. I know there's najasa on me, but I have no idea where it is. It could be anywhere, literally anywhere on my body. Or they say, could it be in your mouth? So yeah, it could actually be in my mouth as well. So now you have to wash every part of your body, including your mouth, right? And notice in the ghusl, you don't have to wash your mouth. So in reality, it's not the same thing at all. We're talking about two different issues. Okie dokie. وتبعت في ذكر هذا الأصل ولم يذكره الأكثر لأنه ليس موجبا للغسل بل لإزالة النجاسة حتى لو كشط جلده حصل الفرض وفرضه أي ركنه شيئان النية لما مر في الوضوء كأن ينوي رفع الجنابة أو الحيض أو النفاس, right? رفع الحيض أو رفع النفاس أو غسل الميت أو الغسل الواجب لكنه لا تجب في الغسل من الموت والنجاسة لأن القصد منه النظافة وهي لا تتوقف على نية وتعميم ظاهر البدن حتى ما تحت القلفة من الأقلف, which is under the foreskin of somebody who's not been circumcised, والشعر, all of the hair, ولو كثيفا. So why is it that in wudu you do not have to wash inside of a thick beard, but in ghusl you do? What's the difference?
Afwan, can you repeat the question one more time?
So in wudu, if you have a thick beard, you do not have to wash inside that beard. It's okay, you can just wipe the outside. But in ghusl, you have to wash inside the beard. What's the difference?
Frequency?
Frequency, right? Al-mashaqqatu tajlibu taysir. So I'm asking you to do something. The difference, they're the same type of difference, one's more frequent, right? So when we say al-mashaqqatu tajlibu taysir, what do you mean? How difficult, right? I am now going to look at this particular difficulty and try and weigh it against other difficulties, right? That's what I'm going to try and do. So in reality, this is called istihsan. That's what it's called. Shafis, we call it qiyas, right? So a major type of istihsan is saying there's widespread need for this. It's not darura, but it's widespread need, so therefore it's halal or therefore it's excused or whatever. It's a major concept, istihsan, right? Or istislah. We call it qiyas, right? But practically speaking, as functioning people in the Shafi school, you're going to ask me this question. You say, I live in Scandinavia and I want to sign up for employment insurance. Is this halal? So I'm going to try and find out how difficult that is in Scandinavia, to not have to lose your job. How much does it cost to find a job? How hard is it to get back into job market? How difficult is it? How common is it? What would happen? And I'm going to try and find ashbah wa nadha'ir in the Shafi school, right? I'm going to try and find examples where gharar, that kind of level of gharar was allowed for that kind of difficulty, right? You're probably not going to find it, but anyway, the point is that's how you're going to work. ولو كثيفا وبالماء ويتسامح بباطن العقد التي على الشعرات, right? So there's little knot tied, so your hair is tied in a knot. There's you weren't able to, like, do I have to comb my hair and straighten it all out, or is it okay that some of my hairs are in knots? It's fine, right? It says ويجب يجب نقط الضفائر إن لم يصل الماء إلى باطنها إلا بالنقط, right? As opposed to plaits, so you did that by yourself, it wasn't natural, right? So therefore it's not as difficult. فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ. Notice we're applying this same verse. Whoever is forced without going over the limits and without wanting to, here you wanted to, you intentionally plaited your hair, so now the water has to get inside. You don't have to undo your knots, but the water has to get inside, right? So if it doesn't, you have to undo your knots, right? وسننه التسمية أوله كما في الوضوء وغسل الأذى كمخاط والنجس, so disgusting things, right? And najas. والوضوء وتقدم بيانه مع دليله في بابه. قال رافعي ولا يحتاج إلى إفراد هذا الوضوء بنية بناء على اندراجه في الغسل. You don't have to, it's not a separate thing, right? قال في الروضة قلت والمختار أنه إن تجردت جنابته عن الحدث نوى بوضوئه سنة الغسل وإن اجتمع نوى به رفع الحدث الأصغر, right? So notice in the Rawda when he says the Mukhtar, he doesn't mean an ikhtiyar. Okay, it's not necessarily the case. Just note that. When he says wal Mukhtar or kada, he doesn't necessarily mean his ikhtiyar. Okay, he means as-sahih. Okay, does that make sense? So Imam Rafi is saying, because wudu is part of ghusl, you don't need to intend a wudu by this wudu. Imam Nawawi in the Rawda at least says, والمختار, the correct position is أنه إن تجردت جنابته عن الحدث. Okay, so this ghusl was not related to wudu. نوى بوضوئه سنة الغسل. You intend by doing wudu a sunnah of ghusl. وإن اجتمعا, this person had intercourse, for example. He touched his wife, which broke his wudu, and he had intercourse, which broke his ghusl. نوى به رفع الحدث الأصغر. You're going to intend by this ghusl actually removing najasa, removing al-hadath al-asghar. So this is what we saw Ammar. Was it Ammar or Jawad? One of you two, I think it was Jawad. Remember in the sharh of in Nail al-Raja? There was a discussion here.
That was me, I think.
Yeah. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, والتثنية, okay, we'll stop here إن شاء الله. والتثنية والتثليث وهو أفضل كما في وضوئه ليغسل ويدلك, I believe. دلك, يدلك رأسه ثلاثا بعد تخليله في. So doing delk, we mentioned it is offensive not to do delk. Okay, so you're going to wipe your hands all over your bodies. You're going to be maliki for a little bit, right? So it says ويدلك رأسه ثلاثا بعد تخليله working your hands into it في كل مرة ثم شقه الأيمن ثلاث right side then your left side 3 times والتخليل للشعر والأصابع بالماء قبل إفاضته pouring water over him ليكون أبعد من الإسراف because you pour water onto it and makes the water spread better والبداءة بالشق الأيمن لما مر في الوضوء والبداءة بأعلى بدنه للأخبار الصحيحة ولأنه أبعد من إسراف الماء right because obviously going to pour down والدلك لما تصل إليه يده من بدنه خروج من خلاف من أوجبه right whereas it says right either Malikis ولأنه أنقى للبدن وتوجه للقبلة وكونه بمحل لا يناله فيه رشاش كما في الوضوء والستر في الخلوة محافظة على ستر العورة وأما بحضرة الناس so here you mean just you know so are you allowed to be totally naked in the middle of nowhere yes you are if you're making ghusl right but it's recommended to be in a place where nobody can see you على ستر عورتي وأما بحضرة الناس أي الذين يحرم عليهم نظر عورة المغتسل ولم يغضوا أبصارهم عن النظر إليه فيجب الستر right يجب right so if your friend so like, as you tell him look away and he's not going to do it then you're going to have to cover yourself right so is it halal then you just standing in the middle of nowhere totally naked showering under a stream or something like that you can is that good no right okay inshallah let's stop here and come back to you because we're going over time inshallah ta'ala صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك جزاكم الله خير